Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we complete our 5-day program on Warriors Cry for Peace, which has been a very deep and galvanizing exploration of the multidimensionality of the trauma that's caused by war. Before we take that subject up, I want to just note the course that we have been promoting this week by Espiride Ananis on time and consciousness, which is dealing with how we need to refine our intuitive and extrasensory sensibilities in order to accommodate the kinds of travel, whether it's into past lives or into the ability to communicate with extraterrestrials. The course was convened yesterday. I was part of it. And I have to say, it was one of the most remarkable treatments of time and consciousness that I personally have ever heard. So I just want to recommend this course to anyone who is interested in preparing themselves for the extraterrestrial moment that humanity is now getting set to enter. The Pentagon has uploaded a website. NASA 2 days ago uploaded a website on what they're now calling the UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena. There was a big Congress in Mexico over this past week. So extraterrestrials now are going to come into the global public consciousness. And how we understand that and how we refine our capacities to become aware of them and communicate with them is of singular importance to the human family. And so this course is really important. So I'm going to put the link in the chat box for those of you listening on the Zoom. And for those of you listening passively on Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn or however you're accessing this information, go to ubiquityuniversity.org and go to our courses page and then just scroll down to our live webinars and you'll see Espiride's course, Time and Consciousness. It's really, really well done. Really, really exceptionally well done. I want to now turn my attention to the matter of war. And I want to make an observation that contributes to what Stephanie Mines has been delving into over the last several days as she's focused on veterans and really shared through dialogues and her own exploration as a survivor of a family that was dominated by veterans that were caught up in post-traumatic stress disorder and all the domestic and abuse and violence that ensues from veterans who don't properly redemptively process their trauma. What I want to draw our collective attention to is another dimension, and that is the corruption of war. And I want to note that the U.S. House of Representatives is beginning impeachment investigations and proceedings against President Joe Biden for activities that he and his son Hunter engaged in Ukraine. And I want to call to our public collective consciousness that it was President Trump who preceded President Biden that was first impeached for corruption in Ukraine. And it's worth remembering as we fight this completely senseless war in Ukraine that has caused the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians and Russians, and many multiple more of casualties and amputees, and the trauma of veterans. that the reverberations of war corrupt universally and inevitably. And it's an extraordinary thing to take in that the two presidents that contributed to the war currently in Ukraine, the first one was impeached, and the second one is beginning the process of impeachment. And I'd like to just remind people what happened. President Trump tried to influence newly elected President Volodymyr Zelensky, the current president of Ukraine, to begin an investigation of Joe Biden in Ukraine for corruption, meddling in the Ukrainian situation to influence the 2020 election. He also tried to get President Zelensky to admit something that wasn't true, that it was the Ukrainians that had tried to influence the 2016 election, not the Russians. And then when the information came out, he corruptly tried to influence members of his administration not to give evidence that he had done what he had in fact transacted in Ukraine. And that's why he was impeached. And now the Republicans are beginning an investigation for the corruption that Trump was trying to get Zelensky to reveal. And that is that the Ukrainian company, Burisma, massive company in a country that is considered the most corrupt in Europe, along with Albania, and one of the most corrupt countries in the world. And for many decades, Ukraine has been considered an absolutely corrupt country. And its tar has stuck to two US presidents. And it turns out that Burisma was one of those companies that was involved in extensive Ukrainian corruption. They brought Joe Biden's son, Hunter, onto their board while Joe Biden was vice president of the United States and engaging in 2014 in the coup that toppled one of the governments in Ukraine and put in a pro-American, anti-Russian government that began the process of the war that we're now in. So Vice President Biden was intimately involved in Ukraine. His son was asked to join the board of Burisma. The Attorney General of Ukraine began investigations against Burisma because even by Ukrainian standards, Burisma was being egregious. And so what Burisma asked Hunter to do was to call his father, Vice President Joe Biden, to intercede, which Joe Biden apparently did, flew to Kiev, and within a week, the government in Ukraine had fired the prosecutor and dealt with the situation. And in the aftermath of that, Burisma just continued on, and Hunter Biden and apparently the Biden family were given millions of dollars. So that's what's now going to be investigated. And whether it's all true or partially true, or whether what Trump was doing ended up being true or partially true, is not for me to decide. That's for history to decide. Probably not even maybe in our lifetime. But the point that I think is important for us to consider when we deal with the scourge of war is it not only has corrosive effects on people, the civilians, the soldiers, the families, as we've seen over this week. But its corrupting influence spreads to the governments that are involved. And that corruption is corrosive on democracy. It's corrosive on a free press. It's corrosive on public confidence in the civic institutions. And so what the United States is now going to experience is another impeachment process, while multiple crises abound around the world, emanating out of the corruption of war. It's a tar pit, and you can't touch it without being drawn in multiple ways that destroy the human spirit. And so, like Stephanie will be telling us with an interview that she'll have today, and her passion is to end war. And I want to just affirm that as strongly as I possibly can, that if there's anything for which humanity should repent, like it repented in the 19th century about slavery, it began a laborious but inexorable process of eliminating slavery, even though racism abounds, still to the present day. Humanity should rid itself of war. So it's within that context that I just want to thank Stephanie Mines once again. She has provided a recording that we'll listen to for her final session, and then I'll circle back with some comments for our close. Thank you, everyone. And now we welcome Stephanie Mines.
Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Stephanie Mines again. Today, the final day of our series, Warriors Cry for Peace. And today I have a very special guest, Dr. Ousmane Aly Pame, who is speaking to us from Senegal. I want to begin, as always, with a centering practice. It's the one that I have been sharing repeatedly, so you're familiar with it now, and I hope you're using it regularly. But I want to add to our understanding of this practice, which is what I learned from my teacher, Mary Eno Burmeister, who brought it from Japan, Palm Inju. It's also a mudra, obviously, for those who study mudra practices, a hand posture. It's also the way that we pray in many traditions. And I want to speak to Islam and the way that this gesture brings forward the expression, Assalamu alaikum. And I say that to everyone. I learned this really from Dr. Ousmane Aly Pame and the astounding Muslim community that I have had the honor of knowing since I started Climate Change and Consciousness. And the practice of Assalamu alaikum, the greeting, is I honor the peace within you. I remember dearly when I had the great opportunity of meeting with Dr. Pame and his brother, Adama Pame, in Paris, and the taxi drivers who brought me there, who I was a little nervous about, quite honestly, having not traveled very much in that part of France. And when they brought me to Dr. Pame's door, he and his brother, who looked like African princes, if I might say, said, Assalamu alaikum. And the taxi driver, who had a friend with him, said, Alaikum salam. and I felt at peace. I felt safe. I knew that wherever I was in the world, I was at home. So this gesture that brings us into alignment, into the center of our beings, is universal. When I started the Tara approach in 1994, it was the height of the AIDS epidemic. And throughout the world, people were afflicted not only with enormous physical suffering, they were also afflicted with the wounding of othering, the ways in which we blame and point fingers and assign responsibility outside of ourselves, thereby creating fragmentation. And it is that fragmentation that ultimately leads to war, to conflicts that violate the human condition of peace and unity. That is our natural state. That is our original brilliance. And war violates not only the human world, it violates every aspect of the natural world, the seen and unseen, the human and non-human beings, and it violates the future for our children. Dr. Pame will share with us his wisdom stream that comes not only from his lineage within Islam, it also comes from his devotion to the land, where he has steered an organization called Redis, which is the African eco-village system in the Sahel, where he tirelessly works against desertification. The regenerative agriculture that he sponsors is prolific. And he will share with you his own experiences when war comes home. And he will provide for us resources that will help us find a way to end war. And so with that, I would like to turn this over now to Dr. Pame. I may engage with some comments, but primarily I want you to hear from him. So I welcome you, Ousmane. Assalamu alaikum.
Maalaikum salam, dear sister Stephanie. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be with you, to share space with you. And I really celebrate also the great leadership you put forward in bringing communities of different cultural horizons, of different geographical places together to celebrate life, to celebrate peace, and to build genuine friendship and cooperation between, the different parts of the communities.
Thank
and
you.
really appreciate all the support you and all the colleagues from the climate consciousness, circle bring to the work that is also being done here in Redes. Since we started collaborating, I mean, huge steps forward have been also made in this work we do here in West Africa. And hopefully, we will find also time to speak about this during our talk today. And I also send greetings and respect to all our listeners around the world, around the globe. And it's a real honor to be in this circle, visible circle and invisible circle, and really delighted. Thank you. And very briefly, to give you a clear idea where I am from the north of Senegal, in Senegal River Valley, which is the Sahel region, which is also dramatically impacted by climate change, but before that also by the colonial history that we've been also facing. You know, in the Sahel, you will find straight line as borders. You will find, you know, completely artificial borders left here by mainly, you know, French colonization. And these borders have been have divided families into two, have separated people from their land, because people, for example, in Senegal, on the Senegalese side, you know, will have their land on the other, and vice versa. And the Mauritanians will also have their land, or you know, it's also a great grazing space. And the people, you know, there are herders who move from one place to the other. And these artificial borders have created, you know, also other artificial constraints. And it's just really a confusing, a very dark time at the moment. And also at the same time, you know, with the geopolitics, you know, with the French intervention in Libya, with the killing of former Gaddafi, the President Gaddafi, who also wanted, you know, to unite Africa, create one currency. And, you know, Europe somehow felt, you know, he was jeopardizing their own interests in the region. So when Gaddafi was killed, because he also had lots of weapons, these weapons spread in West Africa, in the Sahel region. And today, Mali is really eaten up by instability, war in Mali. Burkina Faso is same thing. And recently, there's a coup d'etat in Niger. There is a very, very strong also anti-French sentiment also that also developed also with all these troubles, political troubles in Africa. So what we trying to do, you know, in REDES is really to clean, sorry to say it like this, to clean the sins of colonization. Because we're trying to connect, you know, these broken communities. And again, after independencies, we had agricultural policies that were completely disconnected, because people were clearing vast, you know, lands to start cash agriculture, like sugarcane, like rice. And this has dramatically changed also the lifestyle in this region. So it's just, you know, in the midst of different complexities, colonial, agricultural, ecological, and all this. So, but I mean, in the midst of this, you know, hope is not totally lost, because we are, you know, as grassroots communities, are working to reconnect these broken pieces, and also to rebuild the ecosystems. And this is also the role of REDES, which stands for Réseau pour l'émergence et le développement des écovillages au Sahel, in short, REDES. And because in 1989, Senegal and Mauritania almost went to war because of these nomad herders. And there was a conflict with a local farmer. And then it escalated very, very quickly. And it became, you know, really transnational problem. So people were deported. Thousands of people were deported across the border. Senegalese were kicked out, deported from Mauritania. And also at that time, also Mauritanians were holding much of the trade businesses, retail businesses in Senegal, and their shops were looted. And all of a sudden, we just woke up in a complete confusion. And the Mauritanian army came to the river. The Senegalese army also went to the river. And personally, I was also affected by this, because my cousin, who was a herder, who took his cattle to the river, was shot dead by the Mauritanian soldiers. One of my grand uncles, because again, remember, so we had families on both sides of this artificial border. My grand uncle was slaughtered. I mean, he was killed by Mauritania on the other. And the Senegalese also were informally organizing themselves and going across the border, taking back their own cattle. And of course, there were bandits also sometimes, because banditism prosper in times of confusion. And I think many people suffered from this. The Senegalese were kicked out of their land in Mauritania. And again, I mean, when I say Senegalese or Mauritanian, I really don't know what it means, because it's exactly the same communities on both sides of the river, same families. But I mean, this artificial border that we inherited is just also creating a lot of, trauma and conflicts, between the people. So in Redes, because we also understood the source of this conflict was a problem of the collapse of the ecosystems. So the herders had less space to move, and also less pastures. And the farmers were also very much, very much, using all they could, their efforts, their energy, to protect also their land. I mean, their fields, because also their families depend on this. So these conflicts, become very, very serious, because of the degradations of the ecosystems. So what we do in Redes is, over the past 3 years, we have been producing trees, and part of these trees go to Mauritania, so that they can use these trees, and they can also grow them, and hopefully this will also help regenerate, the ecosystems on the Mauritanian side. About 400,000 trees, and right now we are producing 30,000 again, and then part of this production also goes to Mauritanian villages, and the other part is to Senegalese. So Redes is trying to put together a trans-border eco-village hub, 50 Mauritanian villages and 50 Senegalese villages coming together, bringing our knowledge together, our commitment, our energy, our resources together to stop the encroaching Sahara Desert, because the Sahara Desert, keeps advancing because of these political, of these agricultural, practices, very poor, ecologically speaking. And the Sahara Desert does not wait for the people to be ready or to replant. It just keeps, encroaching, developing, taking more space. And the result is also thousands of young people leave the Sahel Desert, and they go to Southern Europe, or they go to urban centers. So this region is being depopulated. So by creating orchards, by supporting food processing, by educating the people, we also create, hope. And part of our water program, because though we live on both sides of River Senegal, the water is very much polluted by the agricultural and industrial policies in the region. So though people live by the river, they're thirsty. And so far, Redes has been able to construct 50 wells, both in Mauritania and in Senegal. And so people can have access to acceptable drinking water, and for themselves, for their cattle, and also for them also to start, gardening. And also we organize festivals, we celebrate our successes. And there is one small village in Mauritania called Lobudu, which was a desert, not, complete desert 20 years ago. But I mean, today it's a real forest. It has become an animal sanctuary. People and animals can find food all year round. So we're using this success, and hopefully, to spread it also in the region. And all this, I mean, is really part of our faith of Islam, because Islam, which means peace, it's also a religion that promotes cooperation between all humans, Muslims and non-Muslims. Because in Islam, we are strongly instructed to respect the religion of others. We should not judge in the place of God. God has created diversity. And again, I think even if we just use our logos, our minds, we should celebrate this diversity, because again, God is so big to fill to fit just inside one religion. He is, and I think Muslims, non-Muslims, Indians, traditionalists will agree with that, you know. In Islam, which means peace, you know, the greetings every morning are peace be with you. When you pray, you will say peace be with you. And a true Muslim is not cannot even hurt an insect because an insect has life, and this life is given by God. And by protecting this life in the insect, we also celebrate, you know, God. So we are not allowed in Islam to hurt people deliberately. I mean, self-defense is acceptable, fine. But I mean, you cannot just go out and create mess and hurt people, hurt animals. Even in time of war, it is even forbidden to poison wells or to kill bees, even in times of war, to poison well, to kill bees. And also, Islam also highly recommend Muslims to regenerate deserts, these dead lands, because you know the blessings of God are multiple when people take care of the land, and also the whole world is like a mosque. It needs to be clean because it's a place for meditation. It is a place where people should, in every corner possible, to meditate and celebrate God. So again, it's peace with the elements, peace, you know, among human beings, celebration of God and all animals. Though we know whether we know or whether we don't know, even animals venerate God in different ways. So we don't understand maybe this language, but I mean, I remember when I was young, when we see these pigeons flying high up in the sky and diving down, we would say they're praying. And I remember also when I used to walk with my grandfather, with the light behind, especially in the rainy season, the light of the sun behind the clouds. My grandfather would say, "Oh, it's the sky itself is introspecting, is in introspection." And then we believe the sky also believes and worships God. The earth is a living thing that worships God, and everything we should just show gratitude in having all these elements to ourselves for free. And also, when as guests, we should also leave a clean place when we go. This is Morris is, I think, the work we do in the North is a question of religion. It's a question of ecological, it's ecological sense, and also bringing people together, celebrating the local successes, celebrating the local cultures, and also being open to the rest of the world, embracing diversity, embracing the other people who do not even share our religion, who do not share, I mean, our culture, who don't eat what we eat. But I mean, they're all creatures of God, and we need to celebrate this diversity God himself has created for us. Because with the power of God, he could have just created one language and one religion or one, you know, thing. But I mean, he created diversity. And I think as smart people, we also need to embrace this diversity and enjoy peace between people, enjoy peace between Earth and our planet, beautiful planet. And this is our conception of Islam. And all these people who kill in the name of Islam are not Muslim to us, because they are not entitled to kill. They are not entitled to judge in the place of God. God will judge. God is patient enough, and so this is. I mean, our duty is really to do good, spread good, embrace our brothers and sisters wherever they are on this planet, and knowing that ultimately this planet and all the other planets, all the universe is the creation of God. So love, peace, this is our duty in these troubled modern times.
Thank you so much, Ousmane. So many things came together for me as you were speaking. Now I deeply understand why Redis has always been Senegal and Mauritania. I would see that always when you spoke of Redis, you would speak of Senegal and Mauritania. And now I see from what you have shared, not only the political history behind that, for you, Ousmane, I see the personal history behind that. So when you share resources with Mauritania, in many ways, you are honoring the legacy of Islam for your family members who were lost in those conflicts that are always fragmenting and always disconnecting. And I want to go again to this prayer inju, this gesture, this mudra, that is a mudra of alignment and unification. So when we do this, it's more than just appearances. For me, having practiced this system for 40 years, I feel it still each time I do this, which was why you see me doing it so often. I feel myself coming together, and that coming into my midline, into my spinal column, and into the way that I am a pole uniting heaven and earth through my action. That is regenerative health. And when Ousmane said, we have an obligation to regenerate, regeneration is perhaps a form of the word veneration. And in the Regenerative Health program that I developed and that is available through Ubiquity University, I am talking about venerating through regenerative practices, of which this is a central one, that allow us to come out of the disconnection and the fragmentation, which is the impact globally of colonization. Colonization has afflicted everyone in the world. I am afflicted by colonization here in the US. We are not free of colonization. The racism in the US is a product of colonization. So I now understand Redis as an anti-war movement. I understand regenerative health as an anti-war movement. And through these practices, the beacon of hope that Ousmane lights up for all of us is, in fact, regeneration. So I want to go back to what I said at the beginning of this program about the othering and the finger pointing. And we know that 9/11 produced that finger pointing and that othering and that horrible ostracization of others. And I want to also link our awareness of how that is so destructive and leads to war. I want to link that even with this practice. My teacher, Mary Eno Burmeister, who brought the system of energy healing that I share with you, it's called the Art of Compassion. She brought it from Japan, where she went after being in the US and placed in an internment camp as a Japanese woman, as a teenager. She was placed in an internment camp because of that othering, because of that ostracizing of other populations that we didn't understand, who didn't look like white people, basically. And that humiliating, degrading experience filled my teacher, Mary, with such rage that she never wanted to set foot in the US ever again. And she returned to Japan, where she met a teacher who taught her this energy medicine, which was almost brought out of the earth of Japan. And when he met my teacher, Mary, he said to her, "How would you like to take a wonderful gift back to the US?" So there she was, feeling like she never wanted to go back to the US ever again. And one of the first things that happens to her is she meets an esteemed teacher, an elder, who says, "How would you like to take a wonderful gift to the US?" And through her learning of this practice from her teacher, Jiramarai, she transcended that rage. She alchemized that rage into compassionate service. I don't think I've ever shared that before, but it feels quite appropriate here. I'd love to hear your responses, Ousmane.
Yes, thank you so much for these sharing, very inspiring. Really appreciate. And again, I think we are in a world where fear sells. Fear makes people things move because it's a fear that sells weapon, insurances, and so many other things. And I think we are all, in one way or the other, impacted by this. I mean, 9/11 was also all these killings in the U.S. schools, in the streets, and the U.S. is an opulent, wealthy country. People spending, there are so many homeless people. The prisons are full, and the people are even afraid of traveling to some places. And though it is supposed to be a world of freedom, I think there are very strong invisible walls also around the people, and they cannot enjoy themselves as much as they were supposed to, because again, these invisible walls between the countries, between the north and the south, between inside the countries, are just keeping all of us prisoners of this global, fear that we are promoting in every possible way through our media, through the wars, etc. So today, what's happening, in Ukraine is very, very sad. What's happening in, the U.S.-led war in Iraq is really, really sad. The innocent life that we lost in the 9/11 attacks is really, really sad. And again, it's the same dark forces that, oppress us here in the South, that also oppress the people in the North. It's the same dark forces. I think no one is outside the boat. I think it's all this, as also coronavirus reminded us, we are all closely interconnected. When Corona started, we were just many people were laughing, "Oh, this is a Chinese thing." And soon, within 2 weeks, within 4 weeks, it became a global problem. I think coronavirus was a real marker that, we are all interconnected. It reminded us, this. Thinking that people in the US can develop at the detriment of the people in South Korea or North Korea or in Central Africa is a big mistake. And I think the world has not been able to open its eyes to our interconnectedness, and also that our leaders, our communities can work together to promote peace instead of fear. And of course, all these ecological disasters we're seeing, with the fires in the US, in Greece, the floodings. I think even the elements are rebelling against human stupidness, human stupidity. Though we call very proud ourselves Homo sapiens sapiens, I don't think we deserve this name yet, because we're not showing any smartness, we're not showing any consciousness of what really how we should shape our world and how we should live in it. And we just keep punishing one another, bombing here, counter-attacking over there, fighting over a few meters of a desert of land over there. I think we could have really together come up with a system where everyone will feel finally at home. Whether somewhere in the forests of Africa or in the US, there's enough food, there are enough resources, in the world. But the problem is 99% of these global resources are in the hands of just 1%. So we're trying as human species to create a system like a pyramid and to stand on its tip and keep balance, which is impossible. So we have all these convulsions, between the global north, global south. We have divisions even within one city. You've got these conflicts everywhere. So again, I think really after all these losses, the Second World War, First World War, and the war has never stopped in this world. Never, never. It's always, there are hundreds of open conflicts and hidden conflicts wherever we are. And I think wisdom, really requires us to sit together and hold hands and really make a deep introspection. Those who have suffered in the past need to also find ways to forgive. And those who have also inflicted, pains upon people need also to ask for forgiveness, and so that we can have a new start in the world and give a future to our children and our grandchildren. And this is really important. So people like Martin Luther King, people like Gandhi, people like my grandmother are never outdated. So we need to hear this voice of wisdom, this voice of peace, and really open our hearts, open our minds, and really start spreading good. Well, I speak like maybe a priest tonight, but I mean really, this is a deep faith. And everyone also you will meet, maybe in the north of Senegal will speak a little bit like this, and also in other places. And again, there's also one thing I'd like to mention about this small country, which is Senegal. In Senegal, we have in some places in the center and in the south, we have common cemeteries. And families are divided by two. Part of the families are Muslim and the other part are Christian. And when Christians celebrate Muslim holidays and vice versa, and Christian and Muslims also celebrate Christian. So you will see Muslims who will go and clean Christian cemeteries and vice versa. We share food, we share almost everything. And I think the Middle East can learn from this. Other places in the world also can learn from this, how people of different, religions can live together very, very peacefully, and understanding that we are all celebrating one God that is, infinitely bigger than us. And of course, there are different ways to Rome, there are different ways to Mecca, there are different ways to our hearts. But ultimately, I think it's, our goal is to live peacefully and in harmony with nature, and yes, live a good life, whether we're Christian or non-Christian or believer or non-believer. We all aspire to this inner peace and also outer peace with the people around us.
Thank you, Ousmane. Thank you for the wisdom flowing towards us from Senegal. The birthplace of civilization is actually in Africa. And you are right. We need to look at these grassroots efforts like REDIS. So these tree plantings, this well digging, these are anti-war gestures, and we need to proliferate those messages as a way to peace. And it may seem there's not enough of us to do that. The powers of fear, as Ousmane was describing, the forces of extractionism and colonization may seem infinitely more powerful than us. But as Ousmane has said, there actually is a power beyond that. And and this gesture does it for us physiologically, my friends. Physiologically, this gesture brings us into that infinite alignment. And so, as the culmination of this series, warriors cry for peace. I am a warrior. Ousmane is a warrior. Everyone in climate change and consciousness, everyone in the regenerative health program, we are warriors and we cry. I tell you, friends, I cry. I do. I cry for the children. I cry for peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Yes. Malikum salam. If I'd like just to add one thing, if you
of course
allow me to do so.
Please.
Yes, for example, here when we were building our community center in Lahil, two people in the Mauritanian delegation came, and they were about 60. They had never crossed the border before, because they always thought that they would be in danger somehow on this other part of the border. And myself, when I was invited to Mauritania for the very first time, well, I said, no, I will, take my passport, go to the checkpoints, do everything, according to the administration, the laws of the administration in place, etc. Because again, I think it was also out of fear I was acting like this. And then also really part of Reda's work is to dissipate this fear across the border, so that people can genuinely come together again as brothers and sisters, and also to face that this ecological challenge that the Sahara Desert is posing every single day. And as long as we are not, as long as we do not dissipate this fear, it means people will work, in different places without bigger connections. And today, I'm really happy that some of the trees we gave to Mauritanian villages are now grown up, and this year they have harvested their moringa leaves, they have processed them, and they have found a market in Nouakchott, the capital of Mauritania. So this is already bearing fruit, and so it's real joy and pride in the work we do. And also we've got lots of WhatsApp groups, including communities on both sides of the river, of the border, people sharing stories, and again learning again to live before these the times before these artificial borders were created, and also these new countries, Senegal, which is very, very young country, Mauritania itself, which did not exist not long ago, and because they were built on the ashes of all the kingdoms. So, and then there were, really strong solidarity connections between fishermen, herders, farmers, between weavers, cloth makers, and we're trying in our daily actions and our program to bring back this, so that we can create, harmony again, cooperation between people. And I think also every day, many villages around wanted to join this, the Redes movement, and also do the same thing. I think we are creating really giving some inspiration to other people, and we're also taking some inspiration from other people. For example, at the time, right now, we are, as I said a little earlier, we are in a new cycle of tree production, 30,000 trees. And these seeds part of the seeds come from the southern part of Senegal, which is much greener than the north. It's still forest. because these people in the south, they understand if we do nothing in the north, maybe in the next 2 decades, they will be also desert like us. And so they're supporting what we're doing there. And part of these trees from we develop, in the north of Senegal, part of them go to Mauritania.
I
Now we
love it.
have, yes, now we have an interconnection between regions of Senegal and between also countries in the, in West Africa. And
Yeah.
all this, I think, also is part of the efforts to create this green wall project by the communities for the communities.
What I love that you're reiterating here, Ousmane, is that you are encouraging that we remember who we were before these artificial borders were created, that we remember who we were before we were taught to be afraid of each other. We remember that we do not other. We don't originally behave that way. And that aligns perfectly with the original brilliance that I put forward in the Regenerative Health program. And we're going to close on this because I think it's completely the summary of this entire week that recognizes the dramatic impact of 9/11 on the world and the message of crying for peace, the message of remembering who we really are and performing acts. It's not just a thought, it's not just a prayer, it's an action. The action of tree planting, the action, perhaps you will want to support Redis. We will give you the information for that. The action of remembering who we truly are. So we're going to close with again. We can't do this too many times. Every time I do it. I feel validated. I feel stronger. I feel aligned. I feel in my purpose. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace upon you and around the world.
Thank you, Ousmane. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Ousmane. What a story for both of them. I was struck. I'd never heard the story from Stephanie about her teacher incarcerated in the United States in a prisoner of war camp, filled with such rage as a Japanese American that she left the United States and then is given this teaching and told by her teacher that she needed to return to the United States with a gift. What an extraordinary odyssey, and what an extraordinary, what Plato would have called enlargement of the soul that she was able to gain through the transmutation of rage into compassion. And then she taught Stephanie, and Stephanie has taught us. And Stephanie's Regenerative Health program now has a master's and PhD degree in ubiquity, and Stephanie has students all over the world, and she's healed veterans. So even as the malignancy of war ripples out, so does the compassion of love ripple out. And our job as light carriers, our job as humanity rising, as Stephanie was saying in this last session, we need to be very explicitly anti-war. So Regenerative Health is anti-war. What Ousmane is doing there in Senegal and Mauritania and other countries in West Africa is anti-war. And we need to be anti-war wherever war raises its ugly head, and stand for the truth of our deeper humanity, that we are in an interconnected universe, that we are one with all being, that in every soul is the same DNA. We're made of stars. And whether it's another species or a civilization in a far-off galaxy, we're all one. And it is that singular truth that I think over and over, day by day, we need to remind ourselves of. And that gives us a North Star by which to comport ourselves, with our neighbors, with the larger community, and anyone that we are being told is other. We should be embracing them as an extension of our own self. So I really want to thank you, Stephanie, for everything that you've done to grace us this week as we've commemorated the 22nd anniversary of 9/11. And then next week, we're going to deepen our commitment to peace. And we're going to be celebrating for the entire week what Unity Earth and many of you out there have been preparing for with this 99 days of peace that have been mobilized. And this is the final week. So all of next week, we're going to be talking about peace on earth. And it's going to culminate back in Africa with a partnership that Peace on Earth by 2030 has struck with the African Union. And so we're going to have a lot of people from Africa once again next Thursday, next Friday. And then there will be a special session next Saturday. And our Friday session next week will be an hour later because it's a joint broadcast with hundreds and hundreds of organizations in the Unity Peace and the Sign networks, and all kinds of people are coming together for the 21st of September, which is the equinox, and it is also the United Nations Day for Peace. And then the week after is going to be convened by Peter Mary, and that'll be on consciousness. And there will be more on the unidentified anomalous phenomena. So I won't be present next week or the week after. I'm in transition to Washington, D.C., where I'm taking up my post as director of the Washington office of the New Paradigm Institute that is focused exclusively on this momentous event in human history as the government of the United States begins a 7-year process of collecting and disseminating into the public domain more and more information on the unidentified anomalous phenomena, it's being called, but metaphysically, which is the important thing, providing incontrovertible evidence that we are not alone. That extraterrestrial intelligences, non-human intelligences, not only exist, but they've been here on planet Earth, and there is evidence of sustained contact. And so I am deeply grateful to all of you for your support in my new endeavor. And I will be keeping everyone informed as soon as I land in Washington and take up my residence there and begin the process of interacting with the U.S. Congress and various government agencies and members of the public and the world religions and the major civic organizations with which we're now engaged. So thank you, everybody. I'll personally see you in several weeks' time, and next week will be convened by George Caponelli and Tom Eddington, and then the following week by Peter Mary, and then we'll take it from there. So good to be part of that group of human beings at this most extraordinary moment in human history that stand for the future and the unity of all being. Thank you, everyone. You're all welcome to the after session chat group. You'll see the link in the chat box. You received it in your Zoom reminder. Have a good weekend. I'll see you in a few weeks. Bye for now.